Hello YouTube, yes, it's me, David Frankal. I'd like £5 billion worth of free promotion, please. Yes, I do have the negotiating advantage. What do you mean you're a massive company and I'm just a tiny YouTube channel? Listen, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to shut down my entire YouTube channel. Yeah, how'd you like that? He told me to go to hell and hung up on me. How rude! Yes, I know that was my old Windows phone. My current phone is currently being repaired. So it's a whole new year, 2019, and this year I have only the most exciting things to look forward to, like doing my A-levels, and Brexit, and my whole family moving to Oman and leaving me behind. Yay! I started off this year with work, and more work. But I've also been spending some time I probably should have been spending on work on other things, like campaigning for rail platforms that don't exist. If there is somehow someone on this YouTube channel that still hasn't heard about platforms 15 and 16, then you can click this video and learn all about it. TLDW, there was a plan to build 2 new platforms at Manchester Piccadilly. There was then a new timetable that would take advantage of this new capacity. The platforms were never built, but the new timetable was introduced anyway, and now there are too many trains and not enough platform, and it's mainly Chris Grayling's fault. In the last episode, I discussed my letter to Chris Grayling and the rather patronising response I got. Unsatisfied with my attempt to speak to Mr. Grayling himself, I set up an online parliamentary petition, which has now reached over 400 signatures. If you haven't signed it already, please do. The link is in the description. I also set up a Twitter account at 15 platforms, which is kind of half serious campaigning, half jokes. I also printed out some leaflets, which I've been handing out at Piccadilly Station. I also blue tagged some of them up on pillars and stuff until I got told to stop by Network Rail staff, but I did manage to capture the attention of Heart North West, who I did an interview with a couple of weeks ago. Here's how it went.
A student from Stockport says he's become so annoyed with his train service that he's lobbying the government himself to do something about it. That's Michael Gaffney has more.
Plenty of us are used to putting up with problems on our daily commutes, but though we might complain or even send out an angry message on Twitter, how many of us actually get up and do something to try and change things? 17-year-old David Franknal's trying to do just that. He got so sick of the bad service on the journey he takes to and from Heald Green to Manchester every day. He wrote to the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, laying out exactly what he thinks is going wrong, and wasn't exactly impressed with the reply he got back.
The response I got was the most patronising thing ever been sent. It was something along the lines of, thank you for writing to the Transport Secretary. Your observations have been noted. It is refreshing to see young people take such an active interest in government policy, and I hope you continue to share your thoughts. And I felt quite insulted by that.
David's letter wasn't just a list of complaints. He's come up with concrete suggestions for improving the trains through Manchester, building on the government's own plans. Since 2009, they've repeatedly delayed a scheme that had put extra lines between Oxford Road and Piccadilly and expand both stations.
That was a specific project that was promised. It was a project that was not delivered.
So now, with the help of social media, David started a grassroots campaign to try and get those improvements built for the sake of commuters across the city. He's hoping both train users and politicians take notice.
There is a lot of passenger anger, but often it's just not being directed in the right place. One of the main underlying causes for the disastrous collapse of rail services in May 2018, specifically in Manchester, was the fact that they'd introduced a new timetable based on this idea that the new platforms will be there, but they weren't.
We've been told a report looking into possible solutions to the problems with train services across the north of England is due in the next few weeks.
In other news, I have all of my university offers, including Oxford for geography with an A-star AA grade requirement. I'll let you know how that goes. In January, I watched 2 plays. One was The Producers in the Royal Exchange Theatre, which was brilliant, although at some points difficult to watch without cringing into oblivion. The other one was Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which we watched in the Palace Theatre in London, where we spent the weekend. It had good moments and some good stage effects, but it was just too long. I mean, it was 4 parts. I think with very little effort you could have easily cut it down to 3, or maybe just 2 like a normal goddamn play. Now it's that part of the show where we talk about politics, and can I just say how relieved I am that Theresa May has done the sensible thing and extended Article 50, knowing full well that there's about a 0% chance that within the next 5 weeks we're going to get a deal that both the Commons and the EU can actually agree on. is what I'd love to say at this point. In a thoroughly predictable yet completely unprecedented turn of events, the meaningful vote that was delayed from December was finally held on the 15th of January, and to the surprise of nobody in particular, Theresa May's deal was voted down by a spectacular margin of 230 votes, the biggest Brexit humiliation for the government in literally, well, weeks. Now, any sensible Prime Minister would at this point cut their losses and extend Article 50, but Theresa May instead seems determined to see this deal through no matter what, and her strategy is to try and scare people into voting for it by bringing the country closer and closer to a no-deal Brexit, or a WTO exit, as morons who have no idea what the World Trade Organization actually is insist on calling it. The latest plan seems to be to remove the backstop, which will obviously mean that the EU will instantly reject it, since, unlike the UK government, the EU does actually give a shit about the island of Ireland, and the Good Friday Agreement. The imminent threat of no-deal Brexit has unsurprisingly got many businesses panicking, although it's rather surprising that it took them this long. With Dyson moving its HQ to Singapore and Nissan moving the production of some car model abroad, so it's safe to say that these tweets haven't aged very well at all. Oh. I mean, it's not necessarily true that these decisions were as a result of Brexit. I mean, the fact that Nissan exports most of its cars produced in the UK to mainland Europe, which they might suddenly not have access to, surely didn't have any bearing on that decision whatsoever. As for the chief executives of Sainsbury's, Asda, M&S, the Co-op, Waitrose, Cost Cutter, KFC, Pret-a-Manger, Lidl, the British Retail Consortium and McDonald's all writing to the government to warn them about the implications of no-deal Brexit. I mean, what do these people know about food distribution? So-called experts? What do Jaguar and Nissan know about car production? What do the European Medicines Agency know about medicine? I am so sick of these so-called experts taking sides in the Brexit debate by telling us the truth about how the government's actions have real-life consequences. But what the f*** do I know? I'm just a sixth former who showed up once to a street stall in Cheadle and talks to us on Twitter. By the way, the amount of sheer gammon in the responses to this tweet was just... I've never seen anything like it. On Friday, students across the country walked out of school on a climate strike, protesting against climate change. Many Manchester students gathered in St Peter's Square to demonstrate. I went along, although I wasn't actually missing any lessons, because I'm free on a Friday afternoon generally. It was honestly a brilliant sight to see, and it really seemed to rile up some 40-plus-year-old conservative arseholes who took to Twitter to complain about students missing lessons and trampling on the newly planted College Green lawn. I mean, priorities, people. I mean, climate change, yeah, but the newly planted lawn? Then our old favourite Chris Grayling was in the news this week, unsurprisingly because of a massive f***up. But this time it wasn't actually about trains, it was about boats. As part of the Department for Transport's preparations for a potential no-deal Brexit, Grayling signed 3 shipping contracts to increase cross-channel freight. Now, one of these contracts, worth about £15 million, went to a company called Seabourn Freight, who planned to operate a ferry service from Ramsgate to Ostend. Now, for any of you living under a rock, just hearing me saying this, there's nothing about that sentence that seems particularly amiss. Except, here's the thing, Seabourn Freight don't own any ferries, and Ramsgate can't take any because it hasn't been used in a while and needs dredging. Now, with just 2 months to go, people were getting rather sceptical as to whether or not a start-up company with no ships and terms and conditions copied from a takeaway would be able to get the ferries they needed and dredge the port in time. Grayling, nevertheless, seemed determined until the contract was finally cancelled this week. The general population of the UK is now learning what us railway nuts have known for a long time. Grayling is an incompetent moron. And yet, somehow, he still remains in his job. Meanwhile, in America, Trump oversaw the longest government shutdown in United States history, whilst attempting to gain funding for a border wall with Mexico, which is weird because I was under the impression that Mexico were going to pay for this wall. Or is my memory just off? Anyway, in much the same way that Theresa May showed up to the EU and demanded everything that she wanted right now, and was somewhat surprised to be told, no, piss off, Trump was also surprised when he went to Nancy Pelosi and asked for $5 billion just to be told, no, now piss off. As of the time of recording, Trump's latest strategy to try and get this wall built is to declare a national emergency. even though there is no national emergency at all, since actual border crossings from Mexico to the United States are at a decade's low. So let's see how that goes. So apart from A-level preparation, coursework, campaigning and panicking about Brexit, I don't really have that much on at the moment. I mean, I'm fine. We're fine. Everything is fine. This is fine. Coming up, greetings from Muscat, which will be split into 2 parts, London weekend, and last Sunday Duncan and I did a tour of Mayfield Station. Also, train spotting videos. As for the next episode of this show, dunno. This week's Train Spot of the Week was filmed ages ago when it was still a novelty, but I forgot all about it. It's a Class 175 in the new Transport for Wales livery, leaving Manchester Piccadilly. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.